Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode number 99 of Bob and Chad. Hopefully, everybody's having a good week so far. We apologize for not being on here on Monday night, but we're here tonight. So, hopefully, this all works for everybody that wants to log in. And so, how's Chad?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, we're busy here working on new stuff, and I brought one of my new things with me here. It's been up here for the marketing team, so we launched our upper screen, top screen model Ultraforce machines last week. So boys have been working hard on that. We're excited about it. We had Chase Holland here today, and he took the first one home, and he was one of them guys that they were coming home from New Mexico and forgot to put the pin in the pin, and then it fell out and hit the screen and broke the screen. So we're excited with that to eliminate that problem. And tall guys like me don't have to bend over and look at the screen, and so that's just a nice update to the Ultraforce machines.
Looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Looks real cool. So, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Well, we've got um, special guest we're going to have for the 100th episode, and we'll tell you more about that once we get a few more people logged on here. And I'm excited about that. So that's pretty cool. 100 episodes. Um, that's a pretty good feat.
Yeah, we kind of started it as a fluke, huh?
Yeah, I mean, we just started it because it was COVID and we didn't have nothing else to do, and it was like, what the hell? We might as well do this, and it's worked out pretty good. So pretty cool.
Yeah. Turned back into winter up here. We got a foot of snow in the last 24 hours.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh man,
Just
that
getting.
would have made my day.
Yeah.
I thought it was bad enough. We got a little rain today, but super windy. Man, really high winds. Boy, truck dancing all the way, dancing back and forth all the way home. Man, I tell you what, I'd hate to have been a semi driver today.
Were the Frostbusters supposed to start tonight?
They're supposed to start tonight, but they canceled that. And so right now we're planning on Stewart tomorrow night. And originally, the original forecast was supposed to be like 70 degrees on Saturday, but now it's like 59 degrees. And Marshalltown's Friday night. Of course, well, we're celebrating Amy's 50th birthday on Friday night. Then I'm going to watch a basketball game on Friday night rather than freeze at the racetrack. I figure I got all summer to watch these guys. They'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, my body doesn't do this this cold, wet weather stuff. Just not as good as it used to be.
Right.
Well, evidently Amy was listening. She said, "Gee, thanks." Well, this is the year we have all the zeros. I turned 70 in May, and my daughter Jody turns 40 in September. Bobby's the oddball.
Uh,
Well, when we get some more people logged on, we got 55. Good evening, Jeffrey. We'd like to see you guys. Um, One of the things I'm looking forward to the season getting started around here. It's kind of that time. I mean, we're ready to go racing. We still have a couple cars to build, but we're getting pretty well caught up with everything in the back shop, so it's going pretty good. We got to go up to Paul's tomorrow or Friday and pick up another car, get that put together, and so I'm looking forward to it. Danny, hello from Abilene. Well, nice to see you guys. We were, of course, out in Pennsylvania here a few weeks ago, so we got to see a few new guys out there. Yeah, Tim, that new slider, I actually got to see one of them. That new slider's awesome. No
Yeah, I
doubt
don't have one.
about that.
I don't have one out here. Yeah, the new sliders, we kind of took them to the next level. We we had the old snap ring style for since we started building them, and now we've gone to evolve to a screw-in rod guide, just like a shock, so that when the sliders are fully extended, they don't have the shaft flex like they do with the snap ring styles. And then we also developed a new style lock for it. Also, we had the little pull pin style that revolved around, and that was really cool. And until it took a big clump of mud and got wrecked, and then we went to a double jam nut style, and then the two big jam nuts, they locked so hard together that we were having issues getting them, unjammed. So we went back to the drawing board and we made this. Now it's just a aluminum sleeve that slides over and it's tensioned with a bolt, so it slides out of the way when you want to adjust, and then it slides over it and you tighten the nut or the bolt on it, and then it clamps down on the body to keep the nut from turning. So, like everything, the products are an evolution. We look back on some of the things we used to make, and how we make them now is way different than how we started. And the slider's been one that just keeps evolving over time. So we're excited. This new one has been really good. It's working really good. So we're pumped.
Yeah, no, it looks really good. Like I said, I got to see one of them firsthand, so they're pretty good. Well, thanks for the birthday wish there, Mike. Chad, what's the best position to run the 9010 on top of the rear or beside the pull bar on a UMP open motor?
So I mean, it kind of depends on what you want. When you go up to the chassis, it kind of influences the left rear tire a little bit, puts some traction in the left rear tire, and also affects the dampening. However, the cars today, I just looked at data yesterday of a car that was going around the track, and when it comes in the corner, it only sat down an inch before it went right back to its fully extended on the left rear. But the axle wrap is pretty substantial, so timing that out and getting that axle wrap, when your pull bar's decelling, it just gives you more control when you're aside of the pull bar, because it's only focused on that. You lose a little bit of that dampening on the left rear tire to help stick the left rear on entry, but when you move it next door, you're simply controlling the decel and accel of the pull bar. So tunability wise, next door is pretty good. A lot of guys have been going to it and they like it. I don't know. Where are you, a side of it or up to the frame?
We're still up on top of the axle housing. But we need, we tried it, didn't like it, but that's something that I want to try again this year. I think it's the place to be, really, because up on top of the housing, it has a little too much influence on the rear end, instead of controlling the pull bar. Where when you have it beside you, it pretty much just helps control the pull bar, and it just makes everything smoother. Matthew, what does spacing the wheel inward or outward on each corner do to that corner of the car overall? I never can seem to remember which does what. Thanks for your help between the setup sheets and the quality Weir's parts. We want testing this weekend, and we were good out of the gate. Awesome. Well, that's Matthew. That's pretty good. Well, anytime you space that wheel, if you space it in, it's going to load more. Space it out, it's going to give the wheel a little bit. It's going to make the car a little wider. It's going to make the car more stable, in my opinion. I still like a wider front end car. I think the load is a little better, and it doesn't pivot so much. I'm not a fan at all of putting the right front end. The only place that we really play with spacers is the right rear. If we need to free the car up a little bit on the corner entry, we'll move the right rear out a half an inch. A lot of guys, I mean, they even play with quarter-inch spacers. And the same thing, if we want a little bit more traction off the corner, we'll actually move the right or the left rear out. So moving the wheels in puts more load on it. Like if you did it on a scale, it puts more load on it. But if you move like say you move the left rear in, it's going to turn better, and drive down into the corner better. It's not going to come off as good, but it'll rotate the middle of the corner better. Um, Marshall, when setting engine angle, would you set the intake at 0 with the chassis level, having rake in the chassis, then 0 the intake? That's the rule of thumb. I mean, that's kind of what most people try to do. Um, just I can't tell you. I mean, I'm not an engine guy, so I don't really know what that does or doesn't do. But I know that's what we've always done: is set the car at ride heights, and then the engine setting with the intake at level. Let's see here. When's the best time to add more left rear or right rear load on a USRA modified B mod? Well, it depends on what you want that tire to do. Chad can actually explain that probably better than I can.
Yeah, I mean when you put the left rear load in, you're trying to make the car rotate into the corner better. So that's basically more wedge in the car, so it'll make the car turn in and give it traction off. And just the opposite on the right rear. The right rear load's going to make it drive in tighter and be freer off the corner. So kind of balance out what you want to what what part of the track you want to tune there. I would say a more common change would be the left rear versus the right rear. But anytime you add a right rear load, you make that corner pop up quicker, and I'm not a huge fan of that because it loses that bar angle traction too quick, in my opinion. And we like to take that bar angle traction and try and have that go all the way down the straightaway. So it's kind of a tuning deal, pretty critical on the right rear to get that extended load right.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we play with the left rear a lot. I don't play with the right rear much at all because same thing like Chad just said. I don't want to accelerate that bar angle change because you need traction all the way down the straightaway. Um, Are you guys seeing comeback in the stiffer left rear springs on the modifieds like a 150 or 175? Um, no, not the stuff that the people that I've worked with. No, um, on the sport mods, I think the sport mod tends to like that stiffer spring rather than the softer spring, but it's a whole different deal. Um, with the modifieds, the softer spring gets all your traction is all barring, not spring anyway. And the spring just gets the car up on the left rear and helps load the left rear bite. But the traction itself still comes from the bar angles. So, in my opinion, I don't, I'm not seeing it yet. I'm not saying that it's not happening, but I'm not seeing it yet. Tanner says, "Hey, Bob and Chad, thanks for everything out in Pennsylvania." Well, I had a great time out in Pennsylvania. I'll tell you what, that was probably my favorite school of the whole year. Uh, Enjoyed, Joel's got an awesome place, so he did a great job of hosting us out there at Close Racing Supply, and uh, yeah, I had a great time. Great class, great people. It was fun. Ryan, when talking about spring table, does the screw jack at the chassis location have an effect, or does it only know where the top of the spring is? Um, Go ahead,
So
Chad.
on a screw jack car, it only knows where the top of the spring is. So the spring cup and the spring height are in effect there. versus a coilover car. So this would be looking at the back. So this would be how you would want to run your car on a coilover car. This is so how the right side is lower. So on a coilover, it's where the coilover hooks to the chassis. So when the right side is lower, it'll tip over easier. On a on a screw jack style car, then it's the spring height and the screw jack in with each other. So you can put a shorter spring in there and manipulate it, and you can change the location of that screw jack tip in that cup and manipulate it also on a screw jack style car.
Sam's got, what's your thoughts on a limiter chain on the left front of a street stock? When should a guy reduce travel and not? Just need some more insight on this for a street stock. Um, any any race car you can legally run a chain limiter. I definitely like running a chain limiter. It definitely it regulates how much the car rolls on the right rear. And what happens is most dirt cars, you go in the corner, the car rolls over on the right front, then it rolls on the right rear. Well, if we limit the travel on the left front, the car goes to pick up that heavy left front wheel, which is 80 pounds or whatever, and then now all of a sudden it can't get to the right rear, so it tends to roll to the left rear and help the car traction up off the corner. So limiting that, and you'll find, we set ours basically at an inch and a half to an inch and a quarter a drop. A lot of people run an inch. Some, I've seen some guys run less drop than that. Uh, I've not had great luck under an inch. It seems like it takes too much right rear out of the car to the point where it, sometimes maybe gets a little too free getting in. So I don't have as much load on the right rear as I'd like to see it. But you just have to adjust it and try it to see what you're thinking. And personally, the way those street stocks roll over, I would think that would, if it's legal, well, I'd definitely have one. Mike, what do you think is the best adjustment to make on a four bar steer in better on entry? Do you guys change the right rear load much? Well, we kind of already talked about that right rear load. We don't actually change the right rear load a whole lot. If you're wanting to change the steer in the car, you definitely change the angle of your bars or whatever. What's your recommendation, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, as far as corner entry, you're going to probably work on the wheelbase on the left rear for the steer, unless you're talking about like right front stick, like getting the car to steer into the corner better on the front end. But the left rear bar angle, adding a little left bottom rod is going to make that thing steer in freer into the corner, but it also could make it tail out too much. So if you're talking about entry, you'd probably want to change your load on your right front spring or your right front spring rate to get that to drive into the corner better and steer better.
Mason, what would raising the left rear upper trailing arm mounting location on the rear end do on a street stock? New rear end came with left rear about 2 inches raised. Um, Man, it's a little tricky on a street stock moving those uppers, because really the uppers are technically your panhard bar. So in theory, it would give you more traction, but I don't know. When you start mixing and matching them uppers, I'm a little bit nervous about how everything rotates back there because that suspension is easy to bind up the way it is. So, I'd be a little careful, but in theory, it would give the car more traction off the corner. Well, we're really excited coming up for April 15th, episode number 100 for the show. We've got a special guest coming up. And I'll tell you here in a few minutes who that's going to be. I'll give you a hint who it's going to be. He won the July 31st, 1988 Talladega 500. And that's actually when I got to first meet this gentleman, because he turned around and came to Mason City, Iowa, and ran an IMCA modified and won an IMCA modified race the following Tuesday. Kyle said it's not him. I was only two.
We should have Kyle Johnson on some night. That would probably be pretty comical.
Chris, good evening, guys. Not getting much dynamic steer out of the rear end when simulating a lift and rollover in the shop. I get plenty of left rear hike, but the left rear isn't pulling into the chassis, only maybe an inch. I have checked for all binds. First of all, Chris, what suspension do you have?
Yeah. Four link or
What kind of car you got? A 4-link or 2-link or OEM 4-link, or what do you got for us to answer that question?
Three-link.
3-link. Well, that's a little strange because it should roll ahead. Well, it depends on your angle of what angle you've got the bar at. If you've got the left rear bar at about 25 degrees or whatever angle and upward, it should rotate in the car. It should move ahead that probably 2 inches. So I'm not really sure. Kind of depends on that angle, but it definitely should. Chris has got a 20-inch left rear and a 20 on the left rear and 5 on the right. Boy, Chris, I'm not really sure what's going on there. I would think it would definitely get a little bit more movement than that. I'll have to think about that one a little bit. Marshall, okay, on the engine angle question, it was more related to changing the chassis rig to correct the pinion angle. If I were to go up 2.5 inches of rake to a 1/2 inch of rake, go from 2.5 inches of rake to a 1/2 inch of rake. Well, technically, your pinion angle needs to be set for whatever rake you've got in the car. That should be set, by the chassis builder. I'm not really sure what to tell you.
Yeah, generally the chassis rake is determined by the ride heights from the chassis builder, right? So how much they want the car angled or dynamic or yaw or whatever you want to put it. Most of the time we have the right front corner lower, so it just kind of has the attitude to go into the corner like it should. The pinion angle set with the rear end and should always be, that 7 to 9 degrees on the rear end. But the engine angle, to get that drive shaft lined up right, I think that's with all the angles in the chassis on the ground, like simulating you're ready to go to the racetrack at ride height.
Kyle's got a good point here. Chris, what's your dropout number for your ride height? Do you have too much ride height to start with? Yeah, that's a great, Chris's question is the drive shaft bottoming. Yeah, that's a great question, Jerry. Is the drive shaft bottoming out on the transmission? That will definitely stop everything. Mm-hmm. So that would be good points, guys. I appreciate the input there. Aaron, is there a big difference from running a 16-inch tall 100 versus a 13-inch tall 100 in the left rear? Well, yeah. I mean, because your spring tables, I would definitely run the 16-inch because, like I said, you need that left rear spring table to be higher, and that 13-inch would lower it. Now, if you're running like a modified that's got coilovers, then it doesn't matter. 13-inch spring is fine because it's all determined on the actual location on where it mounts to the chassis. If you're running a B mod or something like that, I would definitely run the 16-inch spring. But on a modified, it wouldn't make any difference.
Yeah,
So what do you got going on coming up here, Chad?
they do say that when you take that shorter spring and get it close to coil bind, that it rebound rates faster. So, I think that's maybe what they're trying to achieve there. And, running that short spring pre-wound basically to coil bind, it stores so much energy that it pops off a little bit quicker than the taller springs do.
Oh, yeah, he says spring behind on a modified. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely the 13-inch spring, what Chad just said, um, because I know some guys that are even running 11-inch spring on that left rear because of that coil bind issue.
Yeah, the problem with the 100 pound short spring is you take material away. So you take material away and you coil bind that thing, and that's the heaviest corner of the race car. And that spring, I mean, you're probably on a 5 to 10 night on that 100 pound spring.
Yeah.
It's not going to last very long because you're abusing it, asking it to do a lot more than it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, that's one of the things that people forget about, don't pay attention to when they go to these softer springs, the amount of abuse that spring actually takes. I mean, the two springs on the car that are going to be killed is the right front and the left rear because they take the most amount of abuse. And a lot of guys forget about that. They're running 10 nights and they can't. The car's kind of starting to suck a little bit and they don't know why. Well, that soft left rear spring guy. Some of these guys are running 85-pound springs. Uh, some of these springs, they just, I don't care how good of a quality spring it is, it's just not designed to handle that much abuse. Chris, it's just a roller now and no suspension, no drive line. To get the wheelbase to where it needs to be per rules, I'm running about 2 inches longer trailing arm than normal. Do longer trailing arms require more angle? Well, technically, yeah, I would definitely put more angle in it with a longer trailing arm. Our sport mod that we build, our left rear is an inch longer than our right rear, just because I like the fact of the longer one because I can run more angle and still slow it down to the point where it doesn't react so fast. It just reacts consistently. And I think it gives us more traction up off the corner. So, yeah, I wouldn't be scared of having to run the longer trailing arms. The right rear, if you can still stay in that 16-inch, would be better. But Chris says Kyle Johnson, probably 6 inches without it being chained up, getting plenty of lift, just lazy roll in. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that longer trailing arm is going to make it feel lazy because it's a bigger radius.
Right. And some guys don't like the longer trailing arm. I mean, I know some of our customers went back to the shorter left rear because it's just quicker. Um, and it's just it's just all style, the driver's style, how good he is with the foot and all that stuff. It just kind of makes a difference there. Let's see, Taylor, how soft of springs are you seeing in the left rear of an IMCA stock car, and what would you notice to the most in handling going from 175 to a 125? The stock car stuff, we're not seeing. I mean, some of the guys are going softer. The problem is you've got a 2,900-pound car, and you don't have the help. You don't have the left rear bar angle to help get traction. So I'm a little cautious of going too soft. Um, I think that 150 is probably soft enough on the left rear because we still have to keep we have to keep traction in the car somehow because we don't have, like I said, we don't have the bar angles that we used to have, and especially now with the ride height rules that they have, before we used to have 22 degrees of bar angle, and now we have 16. Chris, thanks. Confirmed what I was thinking. Chris Shiver, you're going to need to get a mount that bolts in your frame to shorten the bar length back up to shorten the radius of the bars. Yeah, I would agree with that. That's a good point, Kyle. I never thought about that, but definitely because you're not going to want to run over 16-inch bars if you don't have to. Now I know some of the guys up in Wissota country are running long right rear bars, and part of that reason is because the same thing on the angle, they'll run longer right rear bars because to slow that right rear down, because they've got the rule where the left side and the right side have to be within 5 degrees. So by going with 5 degrees split with a lot longer right rear seems to help the left rear traction up better. Chris, I started making one today. Was just thinking I should fix that issue. Just haven't put it on the car yet. Well, that's a good idea. Russell, does putting bite in the car take away side bite? Yes, it does. The more left rear, the more you load the left rear, the less it loads the right rear. So, you're taking side bite out of the car. So you got to be a little tricky when you start running a lot of bite. Some guys run a lot of bite, especially like in some of the stock cars. But it's you can get to a point where it can make the car so loose getting in that all the bite in the world is not going to help you anyway. So what have you got going on this next weekend, Chad?
We got one more trade show, one little trade show for the new Trick Outdoors brand that we started here in the last year, and we've been kind of developing some hunting products and kind of taking the racing trickery to the outdoor line, and that's actually been going really good. We did this will be our fourth show for that deal, and we're actually starting to get orders and sell the product, and it's moving, and people are digging it. And I think we got 6 originals there that aren't even made in the hunting industry. We just kind of took what we were doing there and tried to make better, just like the racing deal that I've done my whole life. Now I started hunting again, and we get into a turkey tent, and we're trying to film and get footage, and Justin's zip tying GoPros up, and I'm like, we can do better. So we made some camera mounts and things like that. So excited about that. This is a local show here, right? 15 miles up the road. So an easy weekend.
Oh, awesome. Well, that sounds really good. Um, Kyle said he needs a Weir's silencer for his left rear -10.
That's a gun. Yeah, we got silencers drawn. We're not sure if we want to get in trouble though. So gonna stay out of that deal. Joe don't like those.
Nick, on a stock car, what kind of shock angles do you recommend on the rear shocks? Um, I like 15-degree angle in at the top, and depending on if where the shocks are mounted behind the housing. I actually mount them backward 5 degrees, or straight up and down, but angle in-wise, I like to be about 15 degrees. That seems to be a good angle that then they can kind of work together and help control the body roll, or give a little bit more input on the body roll. What do you consider a lot of bite in an IMCA stock car? Well, there's some guys out there that are running 200 pounds. Personally, we don't run that much. I still believe in having a balanced race car, no matter how heavy it is. So, we stay in that 100 to 120 pound range. But I'm not saying that, give your car and your driver what they like. And I'm not saying I'm against 200 pounds. The car is going to be a little more freer getting in. As long as it doesn't get too free getting in, it will be a little better off the corner. It's kind of that trade off. The more bite, the freer the car gets getting in. So it gets a little sketchy on when the car loads back up. Well, we've got some room for some more questions. If anybody's got anything else that we need to discuss. Like I said, I'm looking forward to the Frostbusters this weekend, getting things going around here in Iowa. So that's going to be exciting. Be racing Stewart Thursday night. Neat little racetrack. And Marshalltown, which is an awesome racetrack, and Boone's an awesome racetrack. So they're three good racetracks. I know they've put some dirt on both of the Marshalltown and the Boone Speedway, and I know we were over at Marshalltown, and they had it pretty well good. I mean, there was one hole that developed going into three, but other than that, the rest of the racetrack was really good. Russell, Chad, how are the bigger threaded spindle checkers coming along?
They're in line. They're probably I'll have to check, but they're probably still 2 or 3 weeks out. This is March Madness. A little hard to get stuff done quickly. So we're this time of year we focus on back orders and not new products. So, but it should still only be 2 to 4 weeks, I would think. So it's definitely in line.
Awesome. You didn't even know there was something out there that needed a bigger one till
Well,
New York.
I didn't know that there was a different upper ball joint with a 9/16 thread until Russell brought it up, and so we've expanded the product line, and those will be ready soon. All Stars, I think, going to put them in their line because they got the ball joint, so it should be a good deal. But we're working on it.
Tanner, Chad, how was the visit from the Hollands?
Yeah, we had the Hollands stopped on their way. They were up at MB getting their late model. They're pumped. They're going crate racing. They're getting ready for that 100,000 to win race at the end of the year. So they were up at Jimmy and Chris's getting some car work done, and then he broke that smasher when his pin fell out. So he stopped here. We got him that new upper screen one, and them boys from Mississippi, this snowstorm today, they weren't digging it, but there was a small snowball fight outside, so I think they're having a little bit of fun. So, but just great people. It's been a great relationship with them since we met them at Bristol. That was 3 or 4 years ago, and just a great family and awesome group, good race car driver, and so it's always cool when we get people to stop in here, especially when they're from that far away.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Jake, what does changing wheel offset on the right front change the handling of the car? And what about changing wheel offset in the left rear? Well, we kind of talked about that a little while ago, but on the right front, moving it out basically it softens the wheel rate up so that moves the tire further away from the spring, so it'll actually make the car feel like it's got a softer spring in it. So the car will get over on the right front a little bit more. But by moving it out, you also make the car more stable, so it doesn't necessarily move it around. So or doesn't it kind of counteracts each other? It just makes the car more stable. I like, I like playing with spacers on that right front a little bit. We don't mess with it a whole lot, but we do mess with it a little bit. The left rear, that's something that we change fairly often. The left rear spacer, moving it in makes the car turn through the middle of the corner better. Moving it out seems to give the car a little bit more traction because it's just moving that left rear out further. So the driving tires are out further than the leading tires, and makes the car think it's supposed to lean towards turning to the right rather than um, it helps the car come off the corner straighter. Jerry, what's a good starting point angle for a Panhard bar on a sport mod? Um, Angle wise, I'm not, I would say in that 10 to 12 degree range would be where I would probably be. Um, you know, I still actually kind of go off of that rule of thumb where about 3 inches below the center of the axle housing on the rear end and 3 inches above the center of the axle housing on the frame. That's a pretty good starting spot. And that's usually probably around 12 degrees. Bill, normal spring rate on the left front Sport Mod Chevelle chassis. Well, it kind of depends on the chassis. 500 seems to be a pretty common number. 550s are another, 500s to 550s. 550 is going to make the car a little tighter on corner entry. Keeps the load in the right rear a little bit longer. The 500 will help the car turn a little better getting into the corner. So a lot of like our stuff, we run 500s in the front equally, and then go to a 550 on the left front if we need the car to be a little tighter for the driver getting in. Yeah. How many inches per second do you feel a typical dirt track shock travel at? Well, from the testing that we've done, the data that we've seen, about 80% of your lap is in that 2 inches per second. Very minimal movement, slower movement. Now it will spike, and on a rough racetrack, I've seen it spike as much as 30 inches per second. But as a rule of thumb, we found that the majority focusing on the low speed part of the shock absorber is the best tuning part of it. That's where the driver's got the most feel. And like I said, that's where the car is at the majority of the time. So, that's pretty much what I would recommend. Jim, I'm moving to an Econoclass from a B mod, and we have to run Weir's restrictor plates. Would you run a little smaller flow carburetor or stay the same big flow carburetor that would run without the restrictor to get the best performance?
I would stay
I,
with the same one.
yeah, I'm not a carburetor, an engine guy, so I can't help you a whole lot there. Makes sense to stay with the same one.
Yeah, you're just slowing the flow. Basically, you're tapering it down, making resistance and slowing the flow. You still want the same amount of volume going through there, with the bigger carburetor.
Yeah, great feedback. Thanks, Bob and Chad. We appreciate all you guys do for the sport. Well, we have fun. We definitely enjoy it. It's something that, like Chad and I were talking about before we went on air. I don't enjoy the cold weather racing near as much as I used to. I'm kind of a fair weather guy, so I tend to like that 70-degree to 80-degree weather line. But we still enjoy it. I wouldn't know what else to do.
Are you ready to release the information, Bob?
Well, the man that's going to, a good friend of mine, is going to be our guest for our 100th show, and that's Mr. Ken Schrader. Like I said, I got to meet Ken Schrader back in 1988 when he came to Mason City and drove Kelly Shyrock's car. And actually, that deal was scheduled for Bobby Allison. And Bobby Allison was supposed to come and drive that car at Mason City, but that's when he got hurt at Talladega. And so after that big accident, then they switched and Ken Schrader took over for him and he came. We've been good friends ever since. I enjoy being around Kenny. He's always a blast and hell of a good driver. And we a lot of times, I mean, we got to the point where we started building a new car every year just for him to drive. And we'd run it probably 6, 10 times. And we look forward to that. And we kind of had a whole program centered around with the one car. The house car was just Schrader's car. And so it was a lot of fun. And he's an interesting fellow. And he's done a lot. He's driven everything. And so looking forward to it. I cannot wait for the stories, Amy said. Oh, I can only imagine because there's nobody has more stories than Ken Schrader. Jerry, is camber in the right rear a good idea on a metric stock car with the 1350 tires? No. I don't believe in putting camber in the rear end at all. What happens is you put some camber in there, you're putting camber in the rear end when you put stagger in the rear end anyway. We tried that camber in that rear end, and the problem is you lose side bite because it just all depends on how the tire flexes. It was very inconsistent, and I didn't. Well, no, it wasn't inconsistent. It was just consistently loose. We had problems. We just never could get it tightened back up when we put the camber in there. So we've stayed away from that. I got the race against Tim at the Icebreaker in 2013, I believe. I actually won that race, and he got 5th, I think. I never got to talk to him, but he gave me a big thumbs up on the way out and passed by in our pits. Pretty awesome. Yeah, he's a hell of a guy. I'll tell you what. You don't get much better than Ken Schrader. And he's a NASCAR guy that's definitely the good old boy. AJ, Sport Mod going from an 11-inch spring in the right rear to a 13-inch. Will you lose side bite? What else can I expect to gain or lose, if anything? Well, you're going to gain. I mean, you're not going to really gain travel. You're going to mess with your spring table a little bit, which is going to. I would be a little nervous about going with I shouldn't say that. We run a 13 as a standard spring. When we go to an 11-inch spring, we've actually had to go one step stiffer because the spring table makes the car roll on the right rear harder. So I would say with a 13-inch spring, you might have to soften the spring up a little bit. You will lose a little bit of side bite. I mean, you'll definitely notice the difference. Paul, do you ever take caster out of the right front to help the car bottom in the right front out in the quarter? Not using brakes, really thinking about effect of what it does with kingpin inclination and tuning. I stay pretty much on that 4 degrees of caster. It seems like you got to have a little bit of control up there. I've not had, I've not really actually went a lot less than that, Paul. This is something I've never really tried. It's a good point about the kingpin inclination. Uh, I would actually be more concerned not so much about the kingpin inclination as I would how the car's designed and how much caster gain I would have. If I've got a lot of caster gain in the car, reducing the caster could definitely be a help.
I was at Kenny's last Cup win, 1991, Atlanta.
Really awesome. Yeah, we uh, God, I could tell you stories for the whole hour just myself on stuff that we've done. Kyle wants to know, do you set caster the old way or the dynamic way? I set caster the old way.
But you still look at through the travel to see the gains. So I think you're
Right.
always comparing. You're always comparing both. Most chassis builders will look at your dynamic and then tell you what to set it statically, and the suspensions are designed to gain and do what they want through travel.
Correct. Yeah, very true. And when we tend to run, we used to run a little bit more caster with the three-piece spindle than we did the Pinto spindle, because of course the Pinto spindle is a 10-degree spindle and the three-piece spindle is a 7-degree spindle. So that kind of goes back with Paul and his kingpin inclination turning in. Chad, Northern Sport Mod. I set my ride heights exactly initially, then I set my down number. Now my ride heights are different. I understand that. My question is, I bought your setup sticks. Do I set my setup sticks to the original ride height or the new ride height? Do I set my load stick for the static load or original height of the new height? Original height or the new height?
Well, I mean, I don't know what if you are tuning your down number and manipulating your ride height number. So that's what we talk about all the time is when you base your down number, when you're putting a soft spring in and you get a down number with a soft spring, but it manipulates the ride height. And that changes the roll center drastically. So I'm not sure why you're tuning the down number and you're not going with your scaled initial setup. If you're changing your down number because of the springs and you're tuning your bottom number with a softer spring and your ride height's higher, in my opinion, that manipulation of that front roll center is going to affect how that car turns in the corner. And I don't like to do that unless you can run chains, which on a Northern Sport mod you can't tie down and pre-wind into the springs. So I would use the setup sticks at my ride height, what I'm scaled at, and have the load stick, all the numbers at your ride height number, your center to center numbers. And then I'd go to the racetrack and get that down number. And if you're trying to tune the down number based on a softer spring package, I don't think the benefit of the softer spring to turn into the corner is there because you're manipulating the roll center and it don't initially turn in the corner then. So I would set the load stick on your scaled numbers and then tune accordingly from there. Get the down numbers on a standard package if that's what you're trying to do is put the soft springs in and tune accordingly. But some guys have dynamic sticks and ride height sticks. So, the load sticks have created a whole new book of data for everybody. The engineer was here yesterday and we're working on some cool stuff with that, with the load sticks and things that we're doing. And I can't talk much about it, but we got another tool coming that's really, really cool. And we're excited to get that rolling here. And I told him yesterday, we got to get it going. So watch for that, but it's going to be awesome.
Awesome. Well, that'll mean that we're going to have to keep tuning into this show.
That's right.
To see the release.
Yeah, we don't want to let the cat out of the bag too early.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Kyle, I did just about slip there. I know that guy's probably watching, so I can't feed him too easily. So, but it's
yeah,
awesome. Can't wait. We had a good engineering meeting yesterday, so
awesome. Well, that sounds pretty cool. Well, we got time for a couple more questions. If anybody's got any questions.
maybe not.
Yeah. Yeah, our busy point right now is shock absorbers. All those guys that hadn't sent their shock absorbers in that are going to be racing in mid-April sent their shock absorbers in, so they've been getting boxes of shocks every day. And when I was in there this morning or this afternoon, I guess it was, I didn't make it there real early today. So when I got in there, it was definitely the shelves were full. Okay, Tim, I think our knowledge is getting tapped out.
No such thing. We're
Yeah,
always
no,
learning. We're always learning. You're always learning.
always learning. Beth wants the three-piece spindle versus the pintle spindle. What's the difference in caster degree settings? Well, we were actually on the three-piece spindle, we were actually running almost up as 6 degrees. Now this year we've kind of backed away from that and backed down on casters. Now the pintle spindles I never run more than 4, but with the three-piece we're actually back down to 4 this year, and I think it makes it a little better. Keeps the tire a little flatter going through the corner, so definitely helps the car. I think being more stable. But of course, we also changed our caster gain in the front end of the 24 car, so that's why we had to back that caster back down. How much rear stagger is too much stagger? Depends on the racetrack and depends on the tire that you're running. Um, IMCA tire, 2 to 2.5 inches is plenty. Some guys don't like that much. Some guys stick right around an inch. I think stagger's a little bit of a driver preference, depending on stagger gets you through the corner better, but it can hurt you coming off. So it just kind of depends on what the driver likes. And if you got a really good tire, some of them guys are running as as much as 4 inches of stagger on a real decent tire. So it just kind of depends on what sanctioning body you run, what tire you're actually running. Mason, will a stiff lefter make more traction off the corner? Stiff left rear shock. Stiff left rear shock basically will load the left rear longer, keeps the car up, and what it does is it will give you a little bit more traction off the corner, but it's more of a help in the middle of the corner, keeping the steer in the car, so that the driver, if he's not a great trail breaker, we can actually make a stiff left rear shock to help him on corner entry. So the stiffness of the shock actually is more for corner entry than corner exit, but it still will give you more traction up off the corner too. Well, it's 8 o'clock. Can't wait to 2 weeks. April 15th will be our 100th show. Um, we'll have some giveaways too, and so we're looking forward to it and excited about it. Kyle said he always felt that a stiffer left rear loaded up quicker but fades faster. I would agree with that, Kyle. You're 100% right. The stiffer left rear definitely will fade. If you can if the driver can actually hold the car up more with braking and how he keeps the chassis loaded, a softer left rear spring will actually be more drivable and give you more traction down the straightaway. Let's see here. Jim, a stiff left rear gas shock versus a stiff left rear oil shock. Well, the biggest thing, a gas shock's going to have pressure in it, so it's going to load up. The gas shock's going to make the car a little freer getting into the corner because it definitely will push the car over on the right rear a little bit more. The oil shock isn't going to be as responsive as the gas shock, but it'll still, the twin tube shock definitely is still going to do a good job. It's not going to have that response of trying to hike the car up like a gas shock would. All right, we'll see everybody here in 2 weeks. Well, actually, be less than 2 weeks because we'll be back on Monday, and look forward to it. And you guys are great. It was a great night tonight. So, good luck racing for those of you who are finally getting going. And we'll see everybody here in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody.